Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Slabs of concrete fell from the ceiling of a consultation room at Kwai Chung Hospital earlier today. This is the latest in a number of ceiling collapses at the city's public hospitals over the past few months. A thorough inspection will be carried out across all hospital authority facilities in the coming month. Pictures on social media show slabs of concrete that fell from the ceiling and the secondary ceiling collapsed, crushing computers and copiers. The hospital authority confirmed the ceiling collapse happened in a consultation room at Kwai Chung Hospital at 3 a.m. Wednesday. No one was in the room at the time of the incident. The collapsed part of the ceiling measures 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters, with the biggest slab of concrete some 30 centimeters long and wide. The hospital shut down the room in question after the incident. Several other nearby rooms were closed down as the ceiling in one of them was also found to be in an unsteady condition. An engineer said rusting could be the cause of the collapse.
Usually, due to the property, the age of the property, the concrete reinforcement, the rebar in the concrete reinforcement will be rushed, and then the concrete cover will be peeled off and then falling down.
This comes just months after a large slab of concrete fell from a ceiling at Castle Peak Hospital. Last month, a surgical light fell from the ceiling of an operation theatre at United Christian Hospital in Kwun Tong. Last Wednesday, the external cover of a ceiling hoist track for the lifting of patients fell off in Tuen Mun Hospital. Days later, the Centre for Health Protection Office in Kowloon City had concrete falling from the ceiling onto the secondary ceiling. The series of mishaps prompted an apology from the hospital authority today and a 1-month thorough check in all public hospitals.
Our local facility management colleagues will do inspection of facilities and medical equipment based on a risk-stratified structure. In a nutshell, those areas which has been associated with previous water seepage or concrete problems or have track records of defects will be inspected first.
The last time Kwai Chung Hospital went through a safety inspection was in 2021. The inspection was carried out by Fujitec Construction and Engineering Consultants. The company is also in charge of the building inspection of the city's 7 hospital clusters. Fujitec said today it will do its best to assist with the authority's review, adding its building inspection service includes infrared survey and drainage cracks. The hospital authority said its contract with Fujitec is good until November. It will take into account the series of hospital ceiling collapses when it considers whether or not to renew the contract. Cathay Pacific Airways reported an annual loss of $6.55 billion for the year ending December 31st. The airline stressed it's rebounding fast from the pandemic and it's confident its passenger capacity will return to pre-pandemic levels by the end of next year.
So for a long period of time, our passenger capacity was below 5% only. So much so that many of our pilots, their license recency has run out, and now we have to retrain them. Our starting point being lower and later than many other cities and many other airlines. In fact, Cathay Group has been catching up very fast. Within a short time.
Meanwhile, the carrier saw revenues grow 12% to $51 billion and also posted an operating profit of $3.55 billion for the first time since 2019. Cathay added it would be operating at about 70% of pre-pandemic passenger flight capacity by the end of 2023. Hong Kong members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC, met with Politburo Standing Committee member Wang Huning in Beijing this morning. Wang said Hong Kong people should have confidence in the SAR and the country, as he outlined several wishes for Hong Kong at the meeting. Jonathan Choi, one of the Hong Kong attendees, quoted Wang as saying the CPPCC members should have a good grasp of the Basic Law and the Chinese Constitution. Wang hopes Hong Kong will be able to solve the problems involving housing, employment, youth and old age. He also mentioned that CPPCC members should promote the advantages of one country, two systems. The British government said it was ready to defend itself against any legal challenges to a tough new law intended to stop tens of thousands of migrants from reaching the UK coastline on small boats. The UN urged British lawmakers to reconsider the plan, saying it would be a breach of the Refugee Convention and amounts to a ban on seeking asylum, even in genuine cases. British Prime Minister said the law would take back control of UK borders, with the number of migrants arriving in the south coast of England rising 500% over 2 years to 45,000.
My policy is very simple. It is this country and your government who should decide who comes here, and not criminal gangs. They know that our system can be exploited, that once here, illegal migrants can make a multitude of asylum, modern slavery and spurious human rights claims to frustrate their removal. People must know that if they come here illegally, it will result in their detention and swift removal. Once this happens, and they know it will happen, they will not come and the boats will stop.
In France, more than 1 million demonstrators marched in cities across the country in a new round of protests and strikes against the government's plan to raise the retirement age to 64. Clashes broke out between police and protesters as unions called for more protests this weekend, warning that the situation could become explosive. Tracy Furness reports.
Thousands of protesters marched in Paris Tuesday as trade unions stepped up their campaign to force the government to make a U-turn on proposed pension reforms. This was the 6th day of industrial action since mid-January. There was widespread disruption to commuters and high-speed train services. Fuel deliveries were halted and numerous schools closed. Jorge Conchalves, CFDT Transport Secretary General in the Paris region, thinks that in a few days all sectors will stop working. We need to block the country because Macron is exploiting it, he said. This 57-year-old social worker said she is already tired. We need to make space for young people and let those others enjoy retirement. I want to enjoy my children. There's also some minor clashes and scuffles with police on the streets of Paris Tuesday, with some throwing projectiles at officers who responded with tear gas. This is a critical time for Labour and the government, since French President Emmanuel Macron hopes Parliament will adopt his plan to raise the pension age by 2 years to 64 before April. France's hardline union said there would be rolling strikes going forward. Included in the strikes are the oil refineries, which were blocked Tuesday. At this refinery in Donges, no trucks were expected to make oil shipments until at least Friday. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
United States House Speaker Kevin McCarthy plans to meet Taiwan leader Tsai Ing-wen in the U.S. in coming weeks, according to reports. McCarthy told reporters that a meeting on U.S. soil does not mean he won't travel to Taiwan as promised. Reports say the meeting could take place in California during a transit visit by Tsai, in which she would stop over in the U.S. en route to other countries. McCarthy is reportedly planning to travel to Taipei later this year or next year, and was quoted as saying that Beijing cannot tell him where he can go. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said they were seriously concerned about the news. We have lodged solemn representations with the U.S. side and asked them to clarify, she added. In August, mainland authorities staged major military exercises around Taiwan after a visit to Taipei by then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Welcome back to TVB News. There were violent clashes between police and protesters in Tbilisi, Georgia. The anger centers around a draft law which pro-Europeans think could harm the former Soviet republic's chances of joining the European Union. David Garrett reports.
Chaos in Tbilisi, Georgia, a country at a crossroads. This camera is positioned behind protesters who had been amassing outside the Georgian parliament for days. They are setting off fireworks aimed at police while tear gas comes back at them. The law, which has received initial approval, requires organisations that receive more than 20% of their funding from foreign sources to register as agents of foreign influence or face huge fines. Most of those on the streets were peaceful, but the Interior Ministry said there were injuries to protesters and police in what they called extremely violent protests. 66 people were detained. Riot police had to put out fires after petrol bombs were hurled at them. These people are coughing after inhaling tear gas as police disperse the crowds. Critics say a similar law is used in Russia to shut down opposition voices.
They applied it without us knowing anything, and right now we're back here to protest it until we don't see any changes about it. And the law is Russian, as we all know. It has been implemented in Russia, it has been implemented in Belarus, and we don't want to be part of ex-Soviet Union. We want to be part of European Union, we want to be pro-West.
This woman is draped in the flag of Ukraine as she assists one of those injured. Speaking in Berlin, Georgian Prime Minister Georgi Garibashvili reaffirmed his support for the law, saying the proposed provisions met European standards. His ruling party insists it still wants to join the EU. Georgia's President Salome Zurabishvili in New York, with the Statue of Liberty behind her, posted a video suggesting she would veto the bill. Back in Georgia, this video shows a woman with a European Union flag protected from water cannon by fellow demonstrators. Georgians are coming together to try to make their voices heard, but will the government listen? David Garrett, TVB News.
Locally, Octopus is launching a new physical payment card that can be used on transport in more than 320 cities on the mainland. Mimo Sangai reports.
Electronic payment is everywhere on the mainland. In the second quarter of this year, Hong Kong-based Octopus is planning to launch a physical smart payment card that can be used on the mainland, in addition to Hong Kong. The Octopus card, which can be bought in Hong Kong, will serve transport networks in more than 320 cities on the mainland.
We would love to explore different development opportunities with different payments outside of Hong Kong. And as long as that can provide more convenience to our Hong Kong citizens or to people coming to Hong Kong, or even if there is any areas that Octopus can contribute or can take part in, we are quite open.
No name is needed to register the card because it carries a relatively small amount of money. The price has not yet been set. The card can be topped up at MTR stations and convenience stores in Hong Kong, but on the mainland, topping up will be through mobile apps on smartphones. Some Hong Kong residents said with the physical card, it can still be used even if the phone is out of battery. The new card can also be used to collect the government's consumption vouchers, but the money involved can only be spent locally but not on the mainland. For customers who wish to take public transport on the mainland, they will have to buy a new card, and the currency rate will be calculated on the day the card is topped up. Mimo Sanai, TVB News.
A female friend of murdered model Abby Choi's ex-husband, arrested earlier on suspicion of aiding his planned escape, appeared in court today. 29-year-old Poon Hao Yin was taken to Kowloon City Magistracy this morning. She was charged with one count of assisting an offender. Poon was granted bail of $50,000. She was asked to hand over her travel documents and is not allowed to leave the city. The suspect also has to report to the police twice a week. Authorities said the suspect escaped to the mainland before being apprehended after a joint effort by local police and mainland authorities, and then brought back to the SAR. Today is International Women's Day. Chief Executive John Lee said his administration will continue to work with different sectors to establish a tolerant and welcoming society in Hong Kong. Lee posted on social media a photo featuring Director of the Chief Executive's Office, Carol Yip, as well as 5 other female members of his governing team. He said he would like to send his blessings to all women in the city. The CE said the government will inject $20 million into a women empowerment fund to offer further support for all the women who have contributed to Hong Kong. That's the news. Thanks for watching.